Hello and welcome to all our viewers. My name is Anju. I'm a clinical social worker and special educator at PlayStreet, Bangalore, India. PlayStreet is an organization that provides educational services to help children with special needs become more independent and live up to their potential. We offer parent empowerment programs, an integrated schooling program, and a variety of clinical services. In recognition of Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, our focus is firmly set on the profound significance of dyspraxia. We are hoping that this series serves as a platform to accentuate the intricate nature of dyspraxia, confront the unique challenges individuals with dyspraxia may encounter, and champion a heightened awareness that underscores the crucial role of dyspraxia in the broader landscape of neurodiversity advocacy.
Today, we are on the 12th talk of our series under the segment which focuses on the invisible effects of dyspraxia. The topic for today is impact of dyspraxia on intrinsic motivation and sense of self.
And we are honored to have Dr. Veronica Bidwell with us to share her valuable thoughts and information on the same. Veronica is a chartered educational psychologist and writer with expert knowledge of and interest in the many different aspects of specific learning difficulty and neurodiversity. She has been involved in education for the last 40 years and has worked as a psychologist and teacher in mainstream and specialist schools. Veronica has run a leading independent educational psychology service and has extended support to students, parents, and teachers. In May of 2016, she has published her book, The Parent's Guide to Specific Difficulties, Information, Advice, and Practical Tips. It has been described by one parent as a treasure trove of useful information and practical advice for the parents of children with specific learning difficulties and anyone who teaches them. Veronica, we are very grateful for you to take your time out of your schedule to share your knowledge about dyspraxia and learning difficulties. Would you like to share any thoughts to our viewers before we get started?
I just start by saying it's a great pleasure to be here. Hello, Anju, and thank you for having me as part of the program. Shall we start off with your first question?
Yeah, sure. So we can begin our discussion by talking about your book. So what inspired you to write your book, and why did you think it was important to cover such a wide range of difficulties?
Well, my book was inspired by my own need. I wanted a book which I could give to parents when they had brought their child to see me for assessment, because there was never enough time to fully explain to them the implications of anything that might have come up during the assessment. And again, I know when you are a parent, there is a lot to take in when you are a psychologist or the OT or the speech and language therapist tells you their findings. So I wanted a book. When I was young and bringing up children, there was a wonderful book by Dr. Spock, which was medical, but you put it on the shelf. And when you wanted it, the child had come up with pink spots, or they had a terrible cough, or you had a problem of any kind with their behavior or any aspect, you could pull the book off the shelf and look it up. And I wanted my book to be the equivalent of this medical book, which helped with everything. So I wrote a book which covered a big range of specific difficulties: dyslexia, dyspraxia, attention deficit disorder, autistic spectrum disorder, specific language. I think there were about 6 areas of difficulty. And so it was because I wanted a comprehensive book. But perhaps more importantly, and as we are becoming aware, we are certainly in this country, the individual labels for difficulties are being rolled in under diversity. So again, I think what is important is to understand is that many of these difficulties which have an individual label actually coexist. So you can be dyslexic, but also have traits which are indicative of auditory processing difficulty, or indeed difficulty of the concentration. So there is a big overlap of the signs and symptoms of each individual area of specific difficulty. And I also want to say the book came out of about 30 years of clinical experience. And I know during that time, I have met some amazing children, some amazing parents, and amazing teachers. And I think I've learned a lot through them and the way they have shared their experiences, their difficulties, their triumphs. And this, in a way, my book was a bit of a bringing together of what I wanted to share and what I had learnt. I think I've probably said more than enough.
Right. So, could you help our viewers understand the meaning of the sense of self or the sense of competence? And do individuals with dyspraxia have a poor sense of self?
Well, I think the sense of self is who we are, who we feel we are, how we feel about ourselves. Are we confident? Can we fail at something and get up and brush ourselves down and get on? It's a general sense of, woof, who am I? What am I? And I think we can all, with or without a difficulty, have moments of feeling that we're worthless, we can't do things. But at heart, I think we have a basic level of understanding of our worth. Where does it come from? Well, a bit like knowing what you look like. In order to know what you look like, you have to look in the mirror, and it reflects back to you your image. Well, I think your feelings of self-worth come to you from the way others react to you, how your parents react to you, then how your peer group react, how your teachers react. So it's very important for pupils who may have a less good sense of self that all those around them are able to reflect back positively and make them feel good about themselves. But just going on back to do dyspraxics have a weaker sense of self? I think I can give you examples right the way through from toddlers right through to university and adulthood of situations in which people who experience dyspraxia have things they are less good at. And as a result of that, they get very negative feedback. And I'm going to give you one example. Take the small child who has just gone to school, and the children are going into the hall to do some physical exercise. The children have to change their kit. And this child is very, very slow at taking her skirt off and putting on her shorts. So every week she is the last. Every week her teacher says, come on, it's always you. Why can't you be a bit quicker? So this child picks up a negative feeling about herself, and it's making her anxious because she knows she's going to be told off. So that's one example of how the environment and the people in the environment can shape the way you have a sense of self. Because I expect within this example, the child's peer group are also saying, oh, come on. And it happens, this can happen at different stages depending on what's being asked of you.
Thank you. So could you help us to differentiate? So how does a sense of self or a feeling of self or competence develop for a typically developing child? And what ways does dyspraxia affect the development of an individual's sense of self with both physical and emotional aspects?
Okay, I think I've already given the example. I think all of us, whether typically developing or with an area of difficulty, we can all have situations in which we feel that we're not doing so well, and that can have an impact. But if we're going back to dyspraxia, as I said, this will happen continually through the years. So again, to go to school examples, so if we leap forward now to the teenage years, and I have come across children and at this stage, within a school setting, children, young people, will have pupils have difficulty with slow handwriting, with their planning and organizing, and say their essay writing.
Right.
Okay, so I take one particular boy, Tom. I remember seeing him, and he decided he was going to make a major effort to get his written work and his essay writing in. But the feedback he got was all negative. His teacher picked up on all the things which weren't very good, rather than actually saying, gosh, I can see you've made an effort here. And his attitude was then, well, I don't care. If they're not going to, if they don't value what I've tried at, I'm not going to try. So again, I think it is to do with the feedback of everybody around you. Or you're in a sports team and you feel that you're letting the team down because typically you're dyspraxic and you hate ball games. You can't catch the ball or you can't throw it. So the experience of not doing very well and letting your team down can really impact on how good you feel. So I think, have I given some examples? Does that answer the question?
I think so. Could you explain a bit about what it means to be motivated intrinsically, and how dyspraxia influences your internal motivation, and what role do you think motor coordination difficulties play in shaping this motivation?
Okay, let's start by talking about extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when you are given a reward to encourage you to do something. So that's when parents might say, get your homework done by 5 and you can watch the television, or get your homework done and you can have a bar of chocolate. So what we know is that extrinsic motivation can work very well, but doesn't continue to do so. You get your bar of chocolate for being good today, but what do you want tomorrow? 2 bars of chocolate to be good. Intrinsic motivation is one's own internal motivation, and whether we are motivated to do something depends on our level of competence with that task. None of us want to do things which are too difficult. I had this mad idea that I would start to take up the piano again. I only had to get the keyboard off the shelf, plug it in, and have one go, and thought, no, I am not sufficiently competent to feel I can put the effort in. I'll listen to music. So there's competence, there's control. It's easier to do things when you are in control of when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, and there's nobody telling you to do it. So those are the key things are control, competence, and of course it needs to be something you do want to do. So again, it's helping children develop intrinsic motivation. Obviously, they're not going to be motivated to do things which they are not good at. So how do we motivate children with specific areas of difficulty to encourage them to do the things that they are not good at? Well, helping them to have a reason and pitching the task at the right level, etc., is all important. There are other things that we can do to help encourage motivation. So giving the child some ownership is a good idea. So engaging them in discussion about, what do you think you should be doing next in this area? This is your homework. How do you think, what would you like to achieve? Let you decide a little bit about what level you would like to achieve and how you'd like to do it. I think also providing young people with enough time is important. Again, remembering back, I remember I always wanted time to experiment, to do things. And if I didn't get it right first time, I wanted the space to have another go. But I had a mother who was always intervening and saying, come here, give it to me, I'll show you what you're meant to be doing. I didn't want her to show me what I was meant to be doing. I wanted to be allowed to make some mistakes and in my own time. What else? Feedback. As I was saying about the child who made a big effort in school and had negative feedback. It's always important to try and give some positive feedback when you can see that a child has tried, and to describe what it is you saw them trying to do and to say, well done. But again, your feedback has to be honest. There's no good saying, oh, that's wonderful writing, when the child knows it's not. There are a couple of other things which I think are tips for all of us to remember. It is the way we give feedback. Is if you say, oh, that's brilliant, well done, you're so clever. The child equates doing well with you thinking they're clever. And that's the way they are. It wasn't to do with their effort. You need really to not, when they've been successful, to equate that with where you saw them putting in effort and how hard they've worked and how well they've done. And to finish on a small example, I remember one extremely dyslexic child whose spelling, even at university level, was about like that of a 7-year-old. And basically, he was quite confident, happy, and he didn't care. It was only when he started to run his own business that he was motivated enough to really, really check his spellings, because it mattered. It mattered to his financial success. It mattered, in this circumstance, to his self-esteem, because people would slightly laugh at him if he'd got things wrong. So again, I think an important element is motivation, intrinsic motivation, wanting to get something and achieve and do something will come from within if you see there's a really good reason for putting the effort in.
Yep.
Sorry, I've probably gone off track.
No, that's completely fine. Because the next question is if you could share any specific instances where individuals with dyspraxia may struggle with maintaining intrinsic motivation and how it affects their daily lives.
I think we have many of the questions are kind of get relevant to each other, and so yes, we have discussed a bit of this, but I think the motivation of where does it, could you just say that again, where does it impact their daily lives? Yeah. Okay, so was that, sorry, could you say the question again?
So if you could share specific instances where individuals with dyspraxia may struggle to maintain intrinsic motivation and how it would impact their daily lives.
I think, well, let me tell you, I'll give you another, we have discussed some of this, but let me tell you about Stella, who was very bright in secondary school and wanted very much to go to do medicine at university. It was her ambition. She was very dyspraxic, and I think possibly there was an overlap with other difficulties, possibly on an aspect of autistic spectrum. She had the most amazing intrinsic motivation to achieve, but it was entirely hers because she knew what she wanted. But what was so really, really sad was the fact that because of her difficulties, she was spending hours on her homework at night and frequently, and wanted it to be correct, was not going to bed till midnight, was waking up tired. And because of her dyspraxia, it took her ages in the morning to get her bag ready, to get her clothes sorted out, to get herself organized for school. She was frequently arriving late in school. And when in school, she was having difficulty in the lab doing experiments. She had problems sequencing the order of doing stuff, and she used to have to write herself down a list of what she was supposed to do. And that included tying up her hair because she knew that she didn't write it down, she'd forget to do it. And her peer group were pretty mean to her one way and another. And one day they asked her, what did you get for your last set of exams? And she said, well, straight A's. And they said, oh, you can't have done, you're too stupid. So here is somebody who actually has intrinsic motivation, but was getting very little support. So my job was to go to the school and say, this young pupil has areas of difficulty. They would not accept the difficulties. They said, we will not put any support in place until she is arriving on time. It's a lifestyle choice. If she can't help herself, we won't do anything for her. And it was the most disappointing result. So that's not, again, helps you with what encourages. I think I've already spoken about what encourages intrinsic motivation to do with tasks you want to do and having them the right level. But this is another example of somebody who was deeply motivated by wanting to achieve a goal. She did have the advantage of an amazingly supportive family. And indeed, her mother, who was a professional, took off 2 years of time at work in order to be at home to help her to keep on track and plead her case in school. Anyway, it had a happy ending in that she did achieve her goal, and I think she is now fully qualified as a medic.
Thank you for sharing. So again, when it comes to a student and influencing a student's self-worth and motivation in educational settings, what implications does dyspraxia have on academics and extracurricular participation?
Well, it can make quite a lot of things quite difficult. What we know, and actually I'm very aware from my own research, a bit where I had young adults over 20 telling me about their difficulties in school, and the type of help that they had and which helped. So if you look at school, there are various elements to school. You've got the social interaction with your peer group. You've got participation in things like orchestras, teams, sports. You've got the classroom, and you've got the school generally, where as a member of the full society, do you feel that you are able to make a contribution which is valued? Are you a valued member of that community? So I think for pupils, teenage pupils with difficulties, they can have all of those things can present problems. In the classroom, they might be super bright, but their difficulty with planning and organizing and executive function can make it difficult for them to demonstrate stuff instantly and well. Their written work might be a struggle if they haven't had the opportunity to take in a laptop. I would say that actually it's vital for pupils who are dyspraxic to learn to touch type and to use a computer. For some reason, when you're typing, your brain is still free to think and concentrate on the cognitive element of the task that you have. But when it seems to be that when dyspraxic pupils are writing, the sheer effort of having to perform that physical activity, either the brain is thinking about the cognitive bit and the hand slows down, or you focus on the hand and the thinking gets, but for some reason, typing is much more effective and more helpful. So we know that there are difficulties in the classroom. We know there are difficulties with social interaction. We know that can be difficulties with specific sports. A lot of dyspraxic pupils I've come across love sports, but they love individual sports. They'd like to go and throw the javelin, do something where they're not competing with others, and particularly where they're not letting down the team. So could you remind me where we started from?
Yeah, we were talking about extracurricular participation and academics and.
Yes. So how do you motivate them to be engaged?
Yes.
Well, sorry. Yes.
Yeah,
I think the thing is, it is within the classroom, it's actually providing what they need to make things easier.
right.
And again, within sports, it's trying to provide sports which are suitable for them. Again, it's putting support in place to help across the board. So, really allowing pupils to have ownership of what they're doing. I think within school, it's touch typing, making sure that they've had good study skills. I think a lot of schools do study skills for the whole class across the board. But my feedback from the young adults was we had study skills, but they weren't relevant to me. What I really needed was study skills which addressed the areas that I had particular difficulty with. So study skills which are completely relevant would be good. And also having additional time where it's necessary. I think all those are all helpful within the school setting.
Right. So are there specific strategies or accommodations that educational institutions can implement to support individuals with dyspraxia and fostering a positive self-image and motivation to learn?
I think we really we've discussed this has been included in some of the previous questions. So in school, it is touch typing, study skills, giving pupils a sense of their own identity and letting them feel they're valued. And of course, what came through my research was really the most important thing, and the element which actually correlated with their mental health as young adults was the attitude that the teaching and that the adults in school had taken to them, where they were viewed as a valued person who could contribute, where their difficulties were understood, and they did well. Where they felt diminished, where they felt they were regarded as a nuisance or as a problem child, then their outcomes were less good. So I am aware that we ask a lot of teachers. It is very difficult, for them to be an expert in maths or history and to know about every aspect of specific learning difficulty. But it would be great if we could spread the word really for teachers so they knew what to look out for and how to recognize a child. The problem is that very often these pupils who've got developmental dyspraxic can be very verbally, very able, very bright. So within a classroom setting, they might have their hand up and give the most wonderful verbal answer, but then they'll hand in messy work. And the teacher thinks, wow, he's clever. Why didn't he translate what he said onto the page? And if they don't understand that there's a reason, of course, they decide that that pupil is not making any effort, has just been lazy and hasn't tried. So it's very, very easy for the dyspraxic pupil to be misunderstood. So I think we need to support teachers in gaining an idea of what to look out for. And when they are told that there is a problem, to know what the problem is and the fact that, and how to support and how to make that child valued, and feel an important member of that class or that school. It's inclusiveness.
So could you talk a bit about the transitioning of individuals from childhood to adolescence and to adulthood, and what are the long-term effects on intrinsic motivation and the sense of self?
Yes, there's been DCD, dyspraxia, does show a trajectory through early childhood, middle childhood, through the secondary school and into university or work life. It's definitely, there is a progression. And the question has been whether this is all part and parcel of dyspraxia, or whether the fact that you have the real symptoms, which are poor coordination and difficulty with the planning and organizing of movement, and the difficulty with essential executive skills, if you have those difficulties, they tend to create a particular environment around you. And it's the environment around you that then feeds back and impacts on your sense of self. So I've already mentioned the child who was slow to get dressed, got to get their shorts on for running around the hall. Take the pupil of a bit older. I so remember the child who said he dreaded the day they went swimming because, again, it was the taking his clothes on and off. He was really slow. And so it took him hours to get dried and dressed, and they wouldn't wait for him. So frequently, this poor boy would find himself running back to school, often in the cold, trying to get his coat on, and being chastised for it. So in primary, a lot of it comes from difficulty holding your pen and getting yourself physically organized. Then as children and young people transition into secondary, what they are being asked to do becomes much harder. You arrive in secondary school, and my goodness, certainly in this country, having been in primary, you were taught in one classroom and you had your belongings in one desk or one tray. Suddenly at secondary, you have to remember what classes you're going to and what you have to take with you. So what you can find is these poor children take every single book they own with them to make sure they've got the right one. So they go into school with an enormous rucksack on. And we know that their sense of direction can be poor. So literally in the first year, finding their way around an enormous secondary school can be a big challenge and it can be quite daunting for them. So you find these, 13-year-olds running around school with a big backpack on of books, arriving slightly late for class. Oh, and they get in and they get, where have you been? So there are those challenges. And as work gets more complicated and you've got exams, you've got to learn study skills, how to revise, how to write down things quickly. So really, in a way, it is the impact of dyspraxia depends on what you have to do and what context you're in. So you get, in this country, to 17 and you're allowed to drive. Again, feedback from my research, I found almost nobody had found it easy to learn to drive. And there was one determined mother and daughter who just certainly wanted to pass a driving test. And she had had 50 lessons before she was able to take a test. And many of them had taken tests several times. So I think learning to drive is a very good example of something you have to do and where those difficulties kick in. You've got to remember where to go. Your sense of direction is not very good. You've got to think about the road ahead while thinking about what to do with your hands and changing gears. I think driving is a perfect example of a whole set of skills which are a nightmare if you have dyspraxia. And it goes on. And again, many of the young people in my study had been to university and had thrived and done well. But it was interesting as they went into the world of work, the level of anxiety and preparation that some of them were putting in. They were anxious not to get things wrong and were therefore check and double check things. Like one young girl, Nessa, was having to do some kind of admin for her boss. And so booking his flights made her really anxious because she could so easily mistake the morning for the evening, and So I think what people are doing will have an impact on how they feel and how anxious. And again, even adults sometimes find it really hard just packing, deciding how to organize their belongings, what they need to take, and then organizing it in a suitcase. But I think another interesting thing is that a lot more adults now are coming forward for a diagnosis of dyspraxia, but they're not putting physical coordination difficulties as their key problem. Very often it's not mentioned at all. It's more likely that their issues now are with anxiety about getting things done, which can lead to depression. I hope that's answered the question.
Yeah. So how can families or parents contribute to fostering a positive sense of self and intrinsic motivation in individuals with dyspraxia? And are there
Uh,
specific family dynamics or support mechanisms that have been proven effective?
I think that having a supportive family is key. Having a parent who recognizes there's an issue and does everything they can to help you find the skills to overcome the difficulty, but believes in you. I had feedback from parents when I did my study, and they were the ones that had an early identification diagnosis were pleased that they had. The ones who had not understood about their child's dyspraxia till the child was older really regretted it because they would like to have put support in. And I think for them, the support was very much understanding what was hard for the child, but being encouraging. So, I mean, it was not unusual for parents to have actually even in my study, the participants I had come from my practice many years ago. So, and they were enthusiastic enough to join the study. So by definition, they were parents who understood and cared. But they were magnificent in the way that they had stood by their child. I remember one mum saying to me, I still have to help take his things into school. He's doing A-levels. He's in sixth form. Mm-hmm. And his teachers say, why on earth are you helping your child? You know, he should be doing everything for himself by now. And my friends say, oh, stop fussing over him. He can do it for himself. But she said, I know that he still needs support. You know, is this right? And my attitude was, yes, if you think your child needs support, provide it. You are the one who knows him. You know what he goes through. You know what he needs. Your friend isn't his parent. His teacher is not his parent. Yeah, of course, most children are very independent by the time they're in their second half of teens. But if your child isn't, stick by him. It will help in the end. And again, the feedback from the young people I had was huge gratitude to their parents for the efforts they'd made. So I think helping your child and showing that you believe in him and you understand there are some things which are hard, just being there and being, you're all right, it'll be okay, and we value you is very, very important.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's all for the questions.
Good.
We've gone through all the questions.
Well, I always have too much to say about them. I've learned so much and so enjoyed working with families and young people. And it was such a privilege to have 28 young people provide me with feedback from how they had viewed school. But I think dyspraxia is an invisible disability, and the more we all know about it, the more we can support those who are experiencing it and help them with their self-esteem and their sense of self. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
On behalf of the PlayStreet team, I would like to thank you, Veronica, for taking time to share your insights and expertise with us today. Your perspectives have added valuable depth to our understanding of dyspraxia and developmental coordination disorders. To our viewers, we hope you found this interview insightful. If you have any questions or would like to share your thoughts, feel free to connect with us. At PlayStreet, we do offer a special program called the Dyspraxia program, which encompasses intensive OT, occupational therapy, speech therapy, physiotherapy, upbeat, and co-regulation. And if you feel that your child has dyspraxia, please feel free to contact us for further details regarding the program. So thank you again for being a part of this conversation, Veronica. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed it. I hope it has been helpful.
So much.
Thank
Thank
you. Goodbye.